Why Ferrari may be getting more than they bargained for with Carlos Sainz. That is the topic of today's F1 opinion piece video. You guys, those of you that did tune in to the one I did last week on Sebastian Vettel and Aston Martin, really seemed to enjoy the more serious kind of video, but also getting just back to discussing real life F1. As I said, I'll be looking to do kind of little dive-ins on specific topics that I care about and want to talk about. So here we are then talking about Sainz going to Ferrari 2021, Leclerc and Sainz. What's that pair going to be like, and my thoughts on why I think it won't be as smooth and plain sailing as Ferrari are hoping for, and maybe in general fans are hoping for, or probably expecting maybe in a way. Now, first of all, let's talk about his teammate for a second real quick. Leclerc, he is Ferrari's golden boy. He's their big bet on a world championship. He's gone through the ranks with Ferrari. He's been kind of groomed to be in that position. So whoever it is coming in, no matter how much Ferrari is saying there's going to be no hierarchy of number one, number two, they're going to have equal footing. They're going to, both have to contribute to the team's success. I think to an extent they know how tough of a job it's going to be. Not just Sainz. Anyone going into that team would know how tough of a kind of seat that's going to be in terms of they really want to challenge. It's going to be tough because they're not going to be easily favoured maybe in tougher situations compared to where Leclerc, obviously, he's going to get the leniency that he kind of already started to get a little bit in terms of the way Ferrari operated in 2020. Not to say that glass ceiling can be smashed, because a driver like Sainz could smash it, and I think Sainz could well smash it if he is up to the task and if he performs as highly as I and others maybe think he could do. He's shown plenty of glimpses, especially in his racecraft and races with McLaren and in previous just in his F1 career, that there is potential, there's ability there for him to maybe smash that ceiling a bit. And that's the issue Ferrari face, is getting dangerously close to that glass being smashed, because once it's smashed, you can't build it back up very easily. Ferrari are wanting to sign a driver that can get solid results, consistent ones, push Leclerc even, maybe not so much that it destabilizes the team, but pushes him enough to maybe even find a new level, essentially. And that's what, many are hoping that maybe Sergio Perez can do with Verstappen. Verstappen's been at such a high level for so long. Could Perez finally, push Verstappen to find an extra gear somewhere else? And that's where Ferrari also wants Sainz to operate. It's trying to push Leclerc a bit to find some extra tenths to even help his cause further, but not to upset the entire balance of the team. Now, Sainz on paper looks to be a great candidate for doing that. He's been in a midfield car for all his career, so it's not like he's stepping in with a huge ego and paddock status of a driver that's going to shake up the dynamic. He's not a race winner. He's not a multiple race winner. Something like, if, the rumors were maybe Ferrari were going to go for Daniel Ricciardo, for example, a race winner maybe comes in with enough status to, maybe just, shift the dynamic a little bit already without even turning a wheel, basically. Whereas Sainz, without having turned a wheel, I think, the team aren't worried about him upsetting anything. And he himself is probably actually just embracing the fact that he's at a top team and wants to please his new team. Obviously, he said how much, he's been dreaming of a Ferrari seat. Especially, I think, for me, I think a lot of people, Sainz fits the bill for a Ferrari driver. Like, you just look at the way he operates out off the track, the way he is, the character he is. He fits the Italian team. And from what we've seen naturally with the way Sainz has spoken about it, Leclerc, Binotto especially actually in interviews over the winter, it seems like they're hoping naturally everything's going to fall into place without anything having to be even written into a contract. But that's the thing. That's the risk the Ferrari are taking, that it just falls naturally into place. And we've seen time and time again in F1, sometimes that doesn't happen. But that's based on an assumption that in the same car, on paper, overall Leclerc should be beating Sainz. That's the expectation. And really, if you think about it in terms of performances, I think Leclerc warrants that kind of confidence that he'll beat Sainz. Also, if we kind of dive into Sainz's driving style, he does like a stable rear end somewhat, so maybe he gets caught out a little bit about how unstable the Ferrari is, whereas we know Leclerc is a driver that can drive in such a wide operating window. But what happens in the races where Sainz is in the prime spot? The car is working for him. We saw glimpses maybe in 2019 when the car was working for Sebastian Sebastian Vettel that he could still take it to Leclerc. So what happens when the car goes Sainz's way, or Sainz, just steps up to the plate, let alone the car? Ferrari have talked about having to focus on one driver either way if the situation came about. And we know from the SDR days, the Toro Rosso days, that there were occasions where, even though Sainz and Verstappen in the end did respect each other as drivers, and they still do respect each other, I feel, there were little flashpoints here and there where you felt like they were rubbing each other the wrong way. So when the days come where Sainz is performing better than Leclerc, maybe can take the fight to him, do they start rubbing each other the other way? It's a little bit different, Leclerc v Vettel, because you've got a young gun versus an old guard, whereas obviously Sainz he's not young, but he's not old either, so they're almost on the same kind of level in terms of that era of Formula 1 drivers. So I think maybe it'll be easier to kind of have a bit of tension there versus the kind of mutual respect that Vettel and Leclerc had. Vettel had to just come to terms with, this guy's quicker, I've got to respect that. And Leclerc still had a lot of admiration and respect for Sebastian, whereas now you've got this situation where you've got maybe two egos playing at each other in the same kind of playing field. Sainz recently said he hopes the vibe can be the same as he had at McLaren, but we just know that's not going to happen at all. Ferrari is not McLaren. That ecosystem is not the same as Woking as it is in Maranello. There's so much more politics involved in Ferrari as a whole. No matter how nice the driver lineup is, how much Sainz and Leclerc might get along right now, there's always politics that fly around in that Ferrari team, no matter what the pairing. So it's just not going to be that same vibe. And maybe that naivety is going to kind of be the undoing, maybe a little bit, of the way Sainz, looks at his own team, and maybe the way maybe the team looks at Sainz, if Sainz reacts badly to the situation or the ecosystem around him, if he's wanting a little bit of a different vibe, and Ferrari just don't want that pH balance that they've got in the team upset. And that balance in the team is going to be quite interesting how it plays out, because now it is a little bit different now with Leclerc and Vettel, as I said, because now Leclerc is the one with all the pressure on his shoulders. He is the main guy. He's got the team coming down on him. You are the man that we're looking to perform. And Sainz is now where Leclerc was almost in 2019. Obviously, Sainz is not touted to be the golden boy, but in a similar way to Leclerc, Sainz has got nothing to lose. He's coming in, and as long as he goes guns blazing, he can be happy with himself. He's literally just got to do that. He himself knows that probably, that he's coming in, maybe he's not going to have the best chance of, being the number one favourite, but if he does just throw everything at it, surely that's got to make something give a little bit, and that he's going to find his way into the team a bit more. And that's maybe going to have some question marks then at Ferrari of how they operate, because if they're so close, if there are those situations where they're too close for comfort, how does Ferrari operate? We know in recent years, even with Kimi and Seb, when those occasional races where Kimi was just as close to Seb in 2018 especially, and 2017 and previous years as well, even with the Alonso era, sometimes Ferrari have been known to mismanage situations so poorly when there's two drivers right there that are quick. When there's one driver that's quick and one driver that's slow, it's calm. Ferrari know what to do. They know that they can stick the slower driver out to dry and help the first driver, but it's not going to happen like that with Sainz. So we know Sainz, how good of a driver he is, and if he was to improve even more, he could get quite close to Leclerc, to the point where that entire situation really, is hammering on Ferrari, and they're going to start panicking as they do, as Ferrari have done so many times. You can't say it's not going to happen, because historically they just always consistently panic in some points in the season, and I just think there's going to be a fair few of those points come the end of the year, maybe, while Sainz beds in. And that's one thing, Sainz is a learner. He's been constantly improving his whole career. While Norris was the better qualifier when they initially started as a pairing, and Sainz actually improved that part of his game in the same way where maybe Sainz has a weakness of he needs a stable rear end. Maybe that's something now he'll have to look to improve. But if we look back at his pedigree of his career, he is a learner, and he is quite a quick learner in terms of over the course of one season, he can adapt quite quickly to try and improve that part of his game, as he did in McLaren with his qualifying. So if he does improve those parts, and just in general as a driver, sees Leclerc, improves to try and get to his level, again, as I say, if he does improve to that rate, there will be a point at the end of the season where they're maybe so close on track that they have those flashpoints. And so it's these factors to me to say that, Ferrari are definitely, signing a driver that's not going to be an easy number 2. There is a risk there that there's going to be some tension. I think, Ferrari, the way they've talked, especially Binotto, the way he's talked, literally saying in interviews that he hopes Sainz can score good constructors points. Like, that's, a bit weird to sign a driver of Sainz's caliber and then talk about just the constructors points he's going to be getting for the team. Obviously, I know he's saying that in a way, obviously Ferrari are in a lower situation now, so they both do need to actually harmoniously work together to just improve the car to score points to climb back up the table, at least finish 4th place they're aiming for, I think, or 3rd in the constructors. Obviously, I think 4th is the more realistic kind of aim for them in 2021. But it's still a little bit odd that they're kind of very much already confining Sainz to that role, and they're taking a bet on that. And I just think, in my opinion, that bet they're taking is a lot riskier than they might think. I think the signs are there that Sainz could be a bit more explosive than they think. But that's just what I think. That's the whole point of these kind of videos. I think going forward, it's just going to be kind of, saying my opinion on a thing, and then you guys can let me know what you reckon in the comments below. So do you guys disagree with me, or do you agree with me in terms of, as I said, there are plenty of signs on the other side to say that Ferrari have actually gone with a very smart signing, but I just think there are those points that I think are going to come up to crop and roost in this season upcoming. But guys, if you did enjoy this discussion video, then be sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you are new around here, then do get subscribed for more F1 opinion pieces and real life based Formula 1 content. I've been Arava. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.